Hello, and welcome to
Hart and Hustle. Well, Hart, whatever. Killing it. We're killing it this time. Already out of the gate strong. Do you feel like, seriously though, sometimes I feel like, are you a Big Bang Theory fan?
I've never seen it, no.
So they do this bit on there, Fun with Flags.
Okay.
Which is like, so since you don't watch Big Bang Theory, I'll give you a little bit of a breakdown.
I know the concept of Big Bang Theory.
So
like I've seen commercials for it. I've seen snippets of little episodes, but I have not watched much of it.
Sheldon, who's one of the main nerds in the Big Bang Theory, does a video podcast on YouTube. It's called Fun with Flags, where they talk about like some of the best flags that he likes across the country. So it's always, they're like, oh, we're talking about the. Sometimes I feel like we're doing like fun with flags. So we got one today here that I don't think that I could point at and people would know. But anyway, coming into the show just now, like I felt like, oh, we're doing
kind of the same thing.
With flags, but Spring Legacy School of Sports and Sciences. Is that right?
Yeah, Houston Legacy of Sports Sciences, if that's correct.
Which has my dude Michael Bishop as the head coach. down there. And
this team is loaded, absolutely loaded. So we're talking about, obviously behind us, the Houston Cougars, and then I'm just going to call them Houston Legacy Titans.
That's what I like to call them too now, Houston Legacy.
Yeah,
and
it's just
maybe they're trying to make that like what they're known as Houston Legacy too.
Well, and you're even going down to Houston, aren't you? This Thursday for Fort Bend Marshall, correct?
Randall
and Richmond.
Fort Bend Marshall. That's a good game.
That's a good game. So who are you going to go watch?
Oh, they've got tons of prospects in that game.
Everywhere.
Richmond Randall has Texas A&M commit Chase Sims. They have 2027 running back Landon Williams-Callis, who was just named to the Dave Campbell's Texas football 5-star watch list in the class of 2027. But on the flip side of that, I think that Fort Bend Marshall, I mean, they've got tons of good prospects, but the guy that I'm really interested to see is 2026 safety Isaiah Williams, who I think has a chance to be one of the top 5 players in the state, maybe an outside shot of being the number 1 player in the state. So I'm really excited to go down there and see some of that talent down there. Nerding out for y'all on in the Texas high school football streets covering this Cruton game.
Texas high school football streets. The streets be saying Greg Powers out there hustling and grinding to get y'all the best content out there.
Hustling, grinding. It's just it's a week thing, but it's a labor of love for us here at Dave Campbell's. It's football season.
It is. It's football season, and that's what we all do here. So let's go ahead and get right into it, right? Let's talk about the Houston Cougars first. First of all, here's the thing. I'm going to bring my college self into this a little bit. The college football fan in me. Started off the year 0-2.
Houston rivalry?
No.
All right.
No, there's no rivalry there. No, I was just going to point out the fact that they won last week. The Houston Cougars won last week.
33 points.
33-7 win over Rice.
Yeah, they had a really good game against Rice. We meant to talk about Houston like multiple times.
Yeah.
But I was like, the competitor in me wouldn't allow me to do it when they were coming off of a loss.
No.
And then they lost the next week, and I was like, no, like, look, like.
But that loss was much closer. That loss to OU was not a bad loss. The loss to UNLV doesn't look as bad now because I think UNLV is actually really, really good, but they got smoked by UNLV week 1.
Yeah, that was a disappointing game, I know, for them, but it was Coach Fritz's first game.
Correct. And
they played better against OU. I think that's when you started to see the tide turn there. Now, bear in mind, we're going to talk about their recruiting prospects in the class of 2025 and 2026 specifically, but I feel like to get to that point, you kind of have to look in the rearview mirror a little bit and see what they did last year. This is a team that brought in 27 transfers. And a lot of those guys are starting to click, get on the same page with one
including
another.
My guy Malik Carr, Michigan State
got his
transfer.
First start this last game.
He looked really good. He looks like a beast out there at tight end. My Lord.
A couple of those O linemen are starting to really play well. Demetrius Hunter from West Orange Stark is a dog.
He is.
Like, he's one of the best offensive linemen in the Big 12. I'm going to go ahead and hang my hat on Demetrius Hunter. All Big 12 honors right now. If you don't give it to my boy, you're screwing in Big 12. Coaches, I guess, whoever votes on it, like, give my boy some love this year.
Yeah, no kidding. And I was impressed with, now, I don't know if you've listened to ROF, but one of our bits on there is we are big fans of the Rice quarterback, E.J. Warner, transfer from Temple. that Houston defense gave him a real tough time
One of the guys
in that game.
Latrell McCutcheon.
Latrell McCutcheon.
Yeah.
Amazing. We actually talked to him at Big 12 Media Day.
Oh, really?
Craven and I did. Yeah. Great kid.
Yeah, Austin LBJ.
Yep.
Really good players. Brother Latravian McCutcheon also getting some run for Houston this year as well. But yeah, the defense is looking pretty good. The team looks tough. Is that okay?
They do. They do.
I guess I feel weird saying that because I didn't think that was like a way that I would use to describe the team.
The team, right.
Especially after the law. Like UNLV is a program on the rise. They have a good young coaching staff. But I mean, like, your team has to find its footing. It has to find its identity.
Correct. You see that score and you're like, oh gosh, like that's bad. But like you were saying, it's not nearly as bad as we thought it was.
Come for the Cruton, stay for the hard-hitting college football breakdowns, right?
I mean, and that's the thing about doing the show is that we've got to know a little bit of college football. We have to know a little bit of high school football because recruiting is kind of like that bridge between the two things that we do here at Dave Campbell's Texas Football. And we're kind of in the thick of all three of them, really.
And we're getting better at Hart and Hustle week by week. Like, I'm feeling like we're getting to find our identity. This is only week 4 for us.
Correct.
Is it week 4 or week 5?
Week 5.
Week 5 for us.
Which is crazy.
See, look, it's going by so fast. But
I know.
We're finding our footing too, and we're going to get better at delivering like the type of stuff that people want to hear. But I think delivering it from a place like where we can be honest, where we can break down and like tell you the truth about what we're seeing. Because I feel like a lot of times in this business especially is like a lot of sugarcoating on things, which is fine. We're talking about sometimes recruits and high school football players. They're not professional athletes.
No.
They're not paid players. But in college they are, so we can have a little bit more
relaxed
talk on them. But as things kind of transition into that direction, I think it's important to give like fair assessments to the fans who want to know like what type of players do they have coming into their program.
Right. So we've talked about the 2024 Houston Cougars and kind of their outlook and what they've looked like so far this season. Let's talk about the class that they're bringing in.
Let's do it.
2025. Now, looking at him, it's pretty easy to see that the top 2 kids in their class are from the state of Texas.
Yeah.
Right? You've got Jasper offensive lineman Demetrius Dean, which, wow, 6'4", 280, 90 pounds, just an absolute bully in the trenches. I mean, he is such an asset to that Jasper team right now, and he's only going to get bigger and better, I think, in Houston. And then you've got, let's come up to Arlington, you've got Mansfield Summit defensive lineman, and that's Travis Buhaki. I was like, I know I'm going to butcher the last name, Travis Buhaki. But, okay, defensive lineman, right? I was watching his tape, totally could play defensive end.
You also scouted him in person.
I did. I went to 2 Mansfield Summit games last year. One was Crowley. The other one was Midlothian Heritage. Yeah.
And they have some good players on that team, but both you and our colleague Carter Yates came back from both Mansfield Summit games last year talking about Buhaki.
Oh, 100%.
Made it to UIL State, by the way, in track.
Mm-hmm. He's fast. He's
strong.
quick-twitched, strong, a lot of power. He can get in the backfield, get to those quarterbacks quickly. I honestly think he could play on the edge a little bit.
Yeah, I think he should. Like, move him around, do some different things.
Definitely.
6'2", 245,
great size.
255 pounds, plenty athletic.
Mm-hmm.
Really impressed with him. He has that, I would describe this as a chip on his shoulder.
Okay.
I think he's overlooked in the rankings. I thought... Like, he's outside of our Hot 100.
Mm-hmm.
But he was an original member of the Hot 100.
Mm-hmm.
So just as the rankings have expanded, he's been bumped down just ever so slightly in the rankings to keep him outside of that top 100 space. But he has the skill set that he has a legit argument. Like, if he were to say, hey, why am I not ready to head of this guy? Like, I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I wouldn't argue that. Like, I think he has a top 100 skill set.
Yeah, I think so too. Another guy in the class that we have already talked about on Hart and Hustle before is quarterback Austin Carlisle out of Fort Bend Ridgepoint. Total dude.
Yeah,
an absolute gunslinger. And we talked about it a little bit, so we don't have to go too much in depth, but he kind of brings a different style of play to this if he stays committed to Houston, because I mean, he's just different than Donovan Smith.
Yeah, no doubt about it. He has moxie.
He's got moxie.
That's maybe the way that I would explain it.
I like it.
He's the type of guy that I feel like a team rallies around. Like, he's somebody who you could hang out with on the weekends.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But knows going to show up for work on Monday.
Yes.
Right? that's the way I would describe Austin Carlisle's game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's like how I'm looking at his game. He's like, all right, I'm going to have a whole lot of fun scoring touchdowns, but when you need me on 4th and 1, I'm going to be there.
I'm going to be there too. Yes.
You know what I mean? So that's the way I look at Austin Carlisle's game. Get him outside the pocket, let him do some gunslinger and go.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's how I would just like describe him. That's why he's fun to watch. That's why if I'm a Cougars fan and like looking at what's coming down the pike, that's a dude I'm excited about. And he's from Ridgepoint.
A team that's absolutely loaded with FBS prospects
For
too.
sure.
Right. And they're doing really well, I'd say, this 2024 season. Speaking
Tap back
of
into the Ridgepoint episode of Hart and Hustle.
was that last week?
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago, correct. But speaking of the class as a whole, they're ranked 45th in the nation, I believe, for the class of 2025. And we can kind of talk about it a little bit. The director of player personnel is Wes Fritz,
Yep.
son of head coach Willie Fritz. They've done a phenomenal job in the class of 2025 so far.
Pull the curtain back a little bit here on kind of talking about how to look at recruiting rankings, team recruiting rankings, and that kind of stuff. Houston is typically not a school that's going to finish towards the top of the recruiting rankings. It's going to be like that forever. Recruiting rankings are sometimes biased in a way towards bigger programs, but that doesn't mean that Willie Fritz, Wes Fritz, and the staff there is not going to do a tremendous job putting the right pieces on the field to compete for Big 12 championships. I think if I'm a fan of the team or I'm a coach on the team, I have that top 25 in the nation circled on where I want to get my recruiting class to.
Yep.
But this was a total rebuild.
Correct.
100% total rebuild in Houston. They had to rehaul the roster.
You already mentioned it. They brought in a ton of transfers too, yeah.
And they do an original job or what I feel like is a really good job of identifying prospects who they like that fit into their system and targeting those guys specifically. And I kind of like to evaluate these recruiting classes and look at what they're doing based on the talent that's around them. I always kind of in my mind put up a 300-mile circle where that college is and how they recruit that 300-mile radius. Well, in Texas is a little bit different because the state's very big, right? Like El Paso's not in that 300-mile radius, but if Houston wants a player from El Paso, they can probably find one there.
Yes.
So the first thing I had circled on my radar or my hit list for this recruiting class, if I'm Houston, O-line.
100%.
And their best player in the class is an O-line.
Jasper offensive lineman, Demetrius Dean.
I also want to bring in more athleticism on both sides of the football, especially on the defensive side of the football. And I think they've really done a really good job of that because there are some guys I feel like on this list that are a little bit under the radar, and two of them are linebackers. One of them being Seth McFarland from Longview Pine Tree. He's a head buster. And to pair with that head buster, they got a guy who I feel like is the most underrated athletic specimen in this class. And I don't want to butcher his name, but I'm going to make sure I try to take Richmond Ugachukwu from Richardson Berkner.
That's a tongue twister.
This dude passes the eyeball test.
He's awesome.
Easily.
Yeah.
Like when you go and see him in person, you're like, how is this guy not like one of the top known stars in the game? Berkner is a program on the rise. They got a really good players there. Trey Bryant's doing a tremendous job.
Love Coach Bryant. Oh my gosh.
Tremendous job there at Berkner and Richmond U. I want to call him Richmond U now. Richmond U is going to be somebody who I feel like you're going to know his name whenever he gets to the college game. To expand on this just a little bit more, this wasn't a tremendously deep defensive back class in Texas. The Houston staff, I feel like, did a good job of identifying that early, and they went outside of the state to find their defensive backs. I don't think that they were going to get one of the top-tier defensive backs in this class. You know, like Joseph Smith, who we're going to talk about from Legacy, he committed to Arizona State. Yeah, he committed early. You know, there are guys like that who were like, oh, these could be our guys, but they didn't get them, so they pivoted. They went out of state, and I thought they did a pretty good job of going back into Louisiana and getting a pair of corners to put onto this commitment list, because without those two guys in the secondary, I think you're looking at this class as like, oh, wow, we missed the mark, because they needed defensive back. So some of the needs that they needed to address right out of the gates, I thought they've done a tremendous job in the evaluation process of finding those guys and knowing where their limits were, knowing where the weaknesses were in Texas, and going out to address those needs.
Yeah, 100%. Well, and I can tell you about a guy that Houston absolutely did not miss on when it comes to Houston legacy, and that's 2026 wide receiver Keyshawn Henderson. Freak is what I would put it into.
I'm going to call him a quarterback.
So here's the thing, and here's what I had written on my notes. I have seen him play at multiple different positions over film. He can play wide receiver at the power 4 level, I think. He can play quarterback at the power 4 level. Heck, he could play in the secondary at the power 4 level. He's just an athlete, an all-out athlete, and he's got a perfect frame for it, too. 6'1", 175, 180.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Looks 6'4".
Yeah. He's a beast out there.
6'4". Keyshawn Henderson is their marquee commitment.
Yeah.
Like, he is the commitment that they got since Fritz has been there that made me open my eyes, made other people open their eyes and be like, okay, Houston's not playing.
Right.
Because Keyshawn Henderson is going to be a top 5 player in the state. He's already rated as a top 5 player on the state on some of the ranking services. He's going to be a ringleader for that class. He's on the recruit circuit, as I like to say. Like, he's out around other recruits. Everybody knows who he is. He's a really good 7-on-7 player where he has played safety and wide receiver. I think he could play either one of those two positions at the next level. But he committed to Houston to be a quarterback. And that's why I feel like they were able to secure his commitment early. To come be the future of this offense and help us build something special here at UH. That was their pitch to Keyshawn Henderson, and it resonated with him. Didn't hurt that their offensive coordinator was the first coach that offered him at Baylor.
Yeah.
And then that relationship has been really strong throughout the course of his recruitment, but he believes what that dude's saying, right? He was there first. And I do think that he could be a fun player under center. He's a great player at wide receiver or safety, but I think I'm going to he's listed as an athlete on our
and that's what I noticed too. I was like, this dude, he is truly an athlete. He could play at any point on the field and make an incredible impact.
I don't feel bad ranking him as an athlete, but he sure as heck's going to be a fun QB to watch. You know what I mean? Like a dude that can pull the ball down and like hurt you on the ground or air it out. He throws a really good deep ball too. It really a lot
of raw arm talent. Yeah,
I'd like to see him in like some of the bigger camps throughout the next year, how he plays quarterback. You know what I mean? How he stands up next to some of the top throwers in the class, because that's one part of his game that I haven't really gotten to see in person is, you know, how do I get the ball out in a camp setting? Can I have a repeatable motion over and over and over again? Am I putting in the work like Caleb Williams at Chicago, if you watch that game, you heard them talking about like he's been groomed to be the next great quarterback. These dudes don't play. Like these top-tier quarterbacks that are Elite 11 winners, and they get invited to all these big camps. Like from the time they start to find out they're pretty good, 13, 14 years old, it's all training.
It's all training from there on out.
It's all training, and they start to get a taste of that success, and they want more and more of it. And to be successful at that level, it's what you have to eat, drink, breathe, the quarterback position. And I'll be interested to see how Keyshawn Henderson develops into
a quarterback. Correct. Well, and he is not the only guy that we want to talk about.
This is a legacy now.
This is a Titans program filled with Titans, as I may say.
Yeah.
Loaded with FBS prospects from top to bottom, right? And this is a team you might think, okay, well, who does Houston Legacy play, right? They beat Hitchcock in week 1. They lost by a couple points to Port Arthur Memorial week 2, lost in overtime to Bel Air Episcopal. This is a legit team, and they play Franklin here in a couple weeks. This is a team that has grown into really, really solid offensively and defensively team as a whole. And obviously, they've got a ton of prospects to show for it.
Coach Bishop was our private school coach of the week 1, after his win over Hitchcock. Of course, that's former Kansas State quarterback star Michael Bishop is the head coach there.
That's right.
Their team has got dogs. And I know that big Joshua Moses, the Texas A&M commit in the class of 2025, 6'3". He's listed at 6'3", 315. This dude might be 340. Yeah. He's a big dude.
He's huge.
Like, he's massive.
Watching his tape,
he's so fun to watch.
Yeah.
And like I went back in, shout out to my dude Tommy Kaiser at Next Level Athlete. I'm telling you, Coach Kaiser in the Houston area, he's the best scout I ever worked with. He goes to every school.
That's awesome.
And he told me this dude is massive. And when I say massive, you're not going to be able to really appreciate it. Every inch of this man is large. Like, he's got huge arms, huge legs, and he is a pancake maker. Can you imagine being a private school kid lined up across from Joshua Moses? I'm glad that they had a chance to play some UIL.
That's what I was going to say. I was like, they need to play. That would scare me.
I'm going to tell you a cool fact.
Okay. Well, I think it's cool. Are you sure?
Yeah, I think you're going to think it's cool.
Okay.
These dudes get to play varsity ball in the 8th grade.
No kidding.
Yeah, they have a rule there where they are able to start playing varsity snaps in the 8th grade. So like Keyshawn Henderson and Joshua Moses, they were varsity players when they were 8th graders. So when they leave high school, when Joshua Moses enrolls at Texas A&M, he'll have 5 years of varsity experience underneath of his belt. They're not only in the trenches good, they got receivers who are good too.
Mike Smith, right?
Mike Brown. Freak show. 6 foot, 175 pounds. He might be the most offered player on this team. 30 offers, 30 plus offers. Ohio State, Oregon, Texas, Texas A&M.
30 plus offers. That's
Can you
insane.
imagine? Like, it's crazy. What I like. Okay. Here in Texas, spoiler alert, we're blessed with great wide receiver talent. Look at the league.
Oh, yeah.
Garrett Wilson, Jackson Smith and Jigba. Like,
they're everywhere.
Like, everywhere has got CeeDee Lamb. Like, these really, really good Texas high school football receivers are not only all over college football, they're making money as professionals as well. Mike Brown is an elite route runner. He might be. I hate to say stuff that like I feel like is going to get me in trouble later. I'm going to say he might be the best route runner, regardless of classification right now. DeCorian Moore's a freak show.
Okay, right.
DeCorian Moore is a freak show, but Mike Brown is as technically sound as I've seen with my own 2 eyes in the last year and a half. Silky smooth, very electric, strong hands. But just to watch the dude run routes is fun.
Yeah.
Even if you're just like watching him warm up, he's a good route.
He's a good route.
He's fun.
Fun to play. Well, and all of them are fun to watch. Like, I mean, I had a great time watching a bunch of their film. I mean, right before we did this, and I was like, dude, this team is just a lot of fun, and they're only going to get better. You know, they're probably going to womp in district play. Like, they're going to mosey through district play like nobody's business.
Well, that win over Hitchcock opened my eyes.
Yeah,
like, that was
for sure.
A shocker because Hitchcock's got Lloyd Jones committed to Texas Tech. You know, they got Kelshawn Johnson committed to Texas A&M.
Yeah, and even Port Arthur Memorial, great team. A very close loss to them. And Bel Air.
Almost. Port Arthur Memorial we talked about today. So that was like probably the backup team. But I thought the connection between Keyshawn Henderson and Houston Legacy was too much to like deny.
Yeah.
Like we had
it's strong enough.
Talk about Houston and we're going to talk about Keyshawn Henderson.
Oh, yeah. So do you think Keyshawn Henderson could be the top commit in 2026 for Houston? One of the top commits.
No, he will be.
He will be.
He will be the top commit. And easy to say that because he's the highest rated commit ever since Ed Oliver. Ed Oliver was the number 2 prospect in the state coming out of high school. And Keyshawn Henderson will be in the top 5, top 10 type of range. I want to say like the next highest prospect outside of that is like in the 20-something. A guy who got on the field last week from Shadow Creek, Maurice Williams, was number 30 in the DCTF rankings in the class of 2024, and he was the second highest rated defensive commit behind Ed Oliver. So that tells you it's not a huge gap because number 2 to number 30 is... All right, that is a huge gap. I'm changing. That's a huge gap because the difference between the number 2 player and the number 30 player can sometimes be leaps and bounds.
Yeah, right.
Because number 2, you're talking
about
Oliver.
Couldn't be, you know, like it kind of just depends on who you're talking about. Yeah, right, for sure.
As they're leaving high school, the number 2 player in the state, that was a freak show.
Right.
you're talking about Myles Garrett and Ed Oliver and Kyler Murray's of the world being in that rankings area, which is fine. Not saying that Maurice Williams can't develop into that, a first-round NFL pick, but Keyshawn Henderson, as far as like the ranking services are concerned, he's going to be up there.
Yeah, I agree. You know who else is a freak show?
Who?
Greg Powers.
Let's go!
The director of recruiting at Dave Campbell's Texas Football.
I didn't like say it.
I didn't want to say it. You can find all of his great work on texasfootball.com/recruiting. What did you say?
This one's work right here.
This
right
is
here.
work.
Dave Campbell's
Heart and Hustle.
Texas Football Tonight.
We'll see you guys next Thursday at 2 for episode 6 of Heart and Hustle.